I hope you're ready for a brand new Xenoblade 2 lore video, this time unearthing secrets of Allrest that I don't think anyone has ever remotely commented on in the past. So watch at your own risk, there will be spoilers for both the base game and Torna ahead. In this video, we will dive even deeper into the conspiracies behind the Tantalise throne, and find that King Eulogiminus's rule is perhaps even less legitimate than he himself had thought. As we all know, Zeke and his father are not in fact the legitimate descendants of Adam, but in fact those of a cadet branch of the Tornan royal family, and Torna, the Golden Country, gives us the obvious clue that they are descended from Zeder, younger brother of the late final king of Torna, and uncle to Adam. Though Adam was a bastard, putting Zeder 3 spots ahead of him in the line of succession, and therefore making Zeke's family the legitimate heirs to the Tornan throne itself, he knew that Adam was far more popular with the general populace, and as such made some sort of deal with Indal to have his line recognized as the legitimate descendants of the hero in exchange for shipments of core crystals, which is what brought the Titan into the sorry state we see it at in the main game. This is all well and good, but what if I were to tell you that not even the late king was the true authority in Torna, and such power was in fact vested in a different race entirely? You may think this is about to delve into more Napon conspiracy theory ramblings, but no, why would they bother taking over Torna? They have their trade guilds. What's the purpose in ruling one nation from the shadows when you can just manipulate and blackmail them all through the power of money? The Napon are fully innocent of all charges in this specific situation. The true power behind the Tornan throne lies not on the head that wears a crown of gold, nor of one covered in fur, but in one festooned with feathers. It is time we spoke of the Turken. While the only ones you're forced to encounter are the world-famous fire dragon chefs in Indal and the employees of the illegal artificial blade factory in Morardain, you can find plenty of Turken in their more native lands of Gormott, Leftheria, and Tantal. Now, I think we should take a closer look at the fact that many can be found in both Leftheria and Tantal, as those are the two places in all of Allrest to receive the most refugees following the fall of Torna. If you turn the clock back 500 years and examine Torna, the Golden Country, you can in fact find that not only was there already a sizable population in Gormott back then, but that Turken could also be found in the Aleta region of Torna itself, the home of Adam. An interesting detail of the Tantalise Turken is that, though their feathers are a different color, more matching with the snowy background than any Turken anywhere else in Allrest, they are still called by the Turken name and not something else, as contrasted by the Chilken from Xenoblade 1, a seemingly separate but very similar or subrace to the Turken found in Valak Mountain, the cold Tantal-esque area of that game. This suggests that though some visual adaptation has occurred to this environment, they have not evolved in separate from other Turken long enough to be considered for a different name, suggesting that the population has not been around for particularly long, a relatively small period of time on an evolutionary timescale, like perhaps 500 years. In the few instances where we hear the name Tantal throughout the Torna DLC, we receive no indication that it is some shut-off isolationist society as it is in the present, and it has no need to be, as there is no secret Torna lineage to be covered up at the time. As far as we know, there is no nation-state structure of any sort until the Tornan refugees move there. And if you think about it, the Tantalise Turken actually adapting to have a different feather color than Turken anywhere else in the world, and the fact that every other place they are known to live natively is a much warmer, grassier climate, it does suggest that Tantal is not their native habitat, and that if any Turken had to move there and form a society like the Turkenlandia region that you can find in the lower levels of the Titan, then they would have had to move there under duress or because their previous home was no longer a place they could live, such as the Tornan Titan getting destroyed. We do, in fact, see plenty of Turken in both the Aleta and Dana regions, suggesting that they would have access to the Titanship platform at Adam's Villa that they could use to escape from Aleta, or potentially even the capital Oresco itself escaping from Dana. Now, Zetter's descendants claiming to be those of Adam centuries later makes plenty sense, but I see little reason for the man himself to put up that charade in the first place back at the time of the fall of Torna, especially to enter some sort of blackmail-esque agreement with the Intaline Praetorium. While yes, he may have instructed his children to claim descent from their people's greatest hero in order to give the monarchy free favor from the general populace, Zetter was, in all intents and purposes, the rightful heir to the Tornan throne following the death of his brother. I see no reason why he would want to hide himself when forming a new Tornan kingdom in exile. I also see no reason why Amalthus would have to fall to extortion or request a shipment of core crystals in order to recognize his claim to the throne in the first place, as Adam was very much standing against all that Amalthus was trying to do to the world. In fact, I would not be having this conversation at all were the scene of Zetter and Stanif locking eyes in the Praetorium not included in the credits of Torna in the first place, as all of this extortion and blackmail and isolationism being a result of the first descendants of Zetter claiming descent from Adam instead makes perfect sense. But there is no reason for all of this to begin with Zetter himself, were there not another, even deeper conspiracy that needed to be covered up. Torna clearly contains many more regions than those directly seen in the expansion, as Adam is offered lordship of Heblen at one point, and there are two people in the line of succession between Zetter and Adam that clearly have lordships over other regions of the nation. But I think that we must examine the regions we do see. Lassaria region contains no Turken, and it has no lord directly overseeing it. Aletta does have Turken in a region known as the Cliff Colony, suggesting this is not their home on the Titan, and Adam is the lord of that region. Turken are also found, possibly more prominently and seemingly in their primary habitat on the Titan, in the Donar region, a place closest to the capital and, in all likelihood, administrated directly by it, as there is no Lord of Dana that we know of. The two places in the kingdom where we know as a fact that the royal authority of the king is seated have Turken populations nearby, and the population located near the region administered by a young, popular, charismatic lord who many hope will obtain the throne someday is noted as a colony and therefore an offshoot of the main population. It stinks to me that, similar to the truth of the family not actually being Adam's descendants, being hidden from all but the ruling monarch of Tantal, the Turken are truly the ones calling the shots in the kingdom of Torna, and while only the ruling monarch knows of this fact, they also choose to keep an eye on any popular members of the royal family in the off chance that they need to influence or assassinate them in order to keep a more pliable puppet in line to the throne. As Zetter inherited the throne with the fall of his brother with the Titan, he would surely be made known of this conspiracy, and as such would need to find a new way to cover it up now that both the Tornan and Turken populations would be distributed in multiple places throughout Alrest, since we know as a fact both Alettan and Orescan refugees left and went to different areas. It now makes much more sense that this newly minted Tornan Tantalise king would go to the newly minted Praetor and his assistant Stanif in order to both form an alliance in hopes of claiming power and maintaining his power, but also helping silencing both human and Turken alike who could possibly jeopardize the entire conspiracy, while also allowing for safe passage of many high-ranking Turken officials to the new realm of Tantal, where the successor state to Torna would be formed. This also goes to show how Turkenlandia, a seeming actual nation of some sort of Turken, exists in the lower levels of Tantal, and yet despite them being a somewhat political rival seemingly towards the kingdom itself, they seem to do nothing in order to stop them or curb their influence or wipe them out, bring them to heel, make them a vassal, because they are truly the ones that are in control. Now, I'm certain that no small number of Turken who couldn't be trusted not to blab of the conspiracy were silenced following the fall of Torna, but I do believe that many who were in the good graces of the higher-ups and those who ran both Turken and Tornan society were allowed to survive and escape to other areas Tornan refugees found home other than just Tantal, assuming the knowledge they had wasn't so classified where they need to be kept on a close leash. And I think this would also include a large number of the Turken assigned to the Cliff Colony to watch over Adam Adaletta. And I would assume that these Turken escaped with the Tornans from Aletta, and as such would end up in many areas that Adam's followers did, namely the area of Leftheria. And this is where the only sense of Turken royalty actually comes in the main story of the game. In Finch's Blade quest, Birds of a Feather, we are introduced to the Turken king and his daughter, the Countess with a K, Amulet. Now, we have no indication that this king is the king of all Turken, as he seems to only have authority over those in Leftheria, and seems to be surprised at the existence of the Turken population in Tantal to begin with, suggesting that Turken being Turken, they outright forgot they had brethren running the show behind Torna and Tantal in the first place. This is very interesting, as a Leftherian Turken monarchy, and therefore one outside of Tantal, and outside of generally needing to exist to continue on the tradition of controlling Torna's heirs from the shadows, means that out of the Turken that were sent to the Aletta Cliff Colony to keep an eye on Adam, some members of said royal family were dispatched to lead the charge and lead the investigation, and that these formed their own monarchy as an offshoot of the main one when they were unable to escape to Tantal with their brethren, sort of in an inverse to how Zetter's line, technically a younger branch of the greater Tornan royal house, ended up taking over the monarchy in Tantal. The thing about all of this, though, is we are not exposed to the leaders of Turkenlandia whatsoever, these mysterious other Turken monarchs that are distant relatives of Amulet, and are the ones pulling the strings behind Eulogimenus and, in the future, Zeke's actions. One may suggest the unique monster Dedicated Conroy as a potential candidate, but this is a unique monster who ambushes the party and fights alongside Turken totems that summon other warriors. This is clearly no leader. This is the greatest warrior of Turkenlandia, who is heavily dedicated to the throne, not the one who sits on it himself. And yet, we never see this throne. We never see the one who sits on it. So I think that this true Turken line has in fact lost its way somehow. And yet I do think I can identify this true heir of Torna, though she herself may have forgotten the heights of power she once had. The only examples of Turken royalty that we see in the entire game are Amulet and her father, and as established, they clearly are not of the main branch and the ones that would be behind Tantal. And yet, all of the lesser Turken, the attendants to the king, or to Amulet herself, confuse the Countess with Finch, suggesting that while she clearly seems different visual-wise from a Turken, she possesses some sort of royal quality that causes the Turken to recognize her as part of their nobility. Now, we have in Brigid and Aegeon examples of blades that are passed down through a royal family to maintain some sort of continuity along them, blades who are treasured as integral to the history and legacy of their nations. And we also have blades like Dagos, who claims to have been the ruler of a nation before, so I think it is no hard stretch to say that Finch was also integral to the old rule of either Turkenlandia and somehow her core crystal ended up outside Tantal, or perhaps she was lost with Torna itself, as we never see her in the DLC, so she may have been in her core crystal at that time. From Torna, we can see that it is possible for a driver's characteristics to show up strongly in a blade they awaken for the first time, as with Laura and Hades, so Finch's original driver being a Turken makes plenty of sense, as she clearly shares more characteristics with them than any of the other sentient races of Allrest. And yet, despite her noble heritage as being the true power behind the throne of the most powerful nation in all of Allrest, one that had ruled for over 1,000 years before it was finally felled by the even greater might of the Aegises, Finch is cursed to forget. Not just on the front of being a Turken and having a bird brain, but in being a blade and not remembering anything from her past lives. Past lives, the information of which is probably fully lost alongside Torna, as any documentation to help her get acclimated and caught up with where she was in the past as she was reawoken by another Turken regent, or whoever would be in charge of awakening her so she may continue her rule. That is clearly all lost with Torna. And yet, she is the true heir. She is the one who is more powerful than any in Turkenlandia, than the king, than Amulet, than Eulogimenus, than Zeke, and one owed far more power than even Amalthus himself. I would say that she should be the true ruler of all of Allrest, as the one true successor to the one true most powerful nation in the history of the world. And yet, she is but a child, one that cannot be trusted to rule fully in her own capacity. We know not how blades mature and age within the process of one awakening, so she may never reach an age of majority in which she can take the full responsibilities and all of the actions of a true ruler unto herself. And so, she needs a regent. In cases where there's not some sort of council, a regent is often an older relative of the monarch. And as I am her self-appointed father, and no one has disputed that, least of all the Praetorium. In fact, I don't think I've ever been asked for a driver registration, even though Rex almost got killed for not having one. I think I can go ahead and say that I am the true person who should be in charge of Allrest right now. And in my first act as Supreme Overlord of the entire world of Xenoblade 2, I command you to like, comment, subscribe, and if you're not watching this video on the day it came out, check the date it was uploaded, because I just did a haha funny on all of you. See you next time. Goodbye.